I've never seen someone ice rosé, but...
You've never seen someone ice rosé? Well, talk to every jeweler in Miami that has fake diamonds.
Really, they do that?
Nobody got that joke.
Listen, the closest you can ever get to feeling like you in this water with me right this very second is when you press play. Track number 1, set in stone, July 17th. So if you got my very first album, this will be my 12th. And this is what you call luxury rap, and this is the closest you will ever get to swimming in this water with the boss, baby.
For years, Rick Ross built one of the most recognizable images in hip-hop. His name became associated with...
Just a quick Google search says that your net worth is $150 million. Is that accurate?
They said it, duh!
That's my car. That's my car. Don't worry, you're gonna get that car someday, Ricky. Bows.
Luxury, wealth, exotic cars, private jets, sprawling estates, and non-stop business success. Every album, interview, and social media post reinforced the same message. He wasn't just a rapper, he was a boss who had mastered both music and business. Ross often described his career as the definition of...
It's like Rick Ross is going broke, okay? And he's now in damage control trying to clean things up, but it's too late. We've already seen how the boss is really getting down.
It's an AP that I'm rocking. This is green stones, green emeralds. It's just me having fun. That's all it is.
I am fuming. That's a fake watch. That's not a real watch. That watch was only produced twice, one in 37mm, one in 41mm. And I know both owners, and they're not Rick Ross.
Luxury rap. By the time he prepared to release his 12th studio album, Set in Stone, he proudly pointed to everything he had built, reminding fans that his success came from years of relentless work. He regularly spoke about traveling the world, managing dozens of business partnerships, and generating enough income from performances and investments to maintain an
Ross has just always been one of my favorite rappers ever.
You're not putting Drake at your level.
No, see, you might be, I could see it in your eyes, you might be confused. If Drake was what he thought, he would have been able to clear all this shit up, address it, and been moved on. I listened to some of it. My engineer it was horrendous. They lost an hour of their life for this shit.
Listen to it.
Yeah.
Are they recovering?
Yeah, trauma.
It's tough.
It is.
Extravagant lifestyle. That image only became stronger as he showed off massive properties, expensive jewelry, luxury vehicles, and ambitious real estate projects. To millions of fans, Rick Ross represented the dream of turning hustle into an empire. His confidence made it seem like nothing could slow him down. But by 2026, the public conversation around Ross had changed dramatically. Instead of celebrating his success, critics and online commentators became far more interested in controversies, personal feuds, and constant speculation about his finances. The larger-than-life image that once inspired admiration slowly became the subject of endless debate. Social media only added fuel to the conversation. Every appearance sparked new discussions, whether people questioned expensive jewelry, commented on him flying on commercial airlines, or speculated about the status of his private jet. Even when Ross explained that certain decisions were simply personal choices or temporary situations, many online personalities continued treating them as evidence that something had changed behind the scenes. At the same time, Ross found himself involved in several public disputes with other rappers. Instead of his music dominating headlines, attention increasingly shifted toward exchanges with artists like 50 Cent and Drake, along with countless reactions from commentators across the internet. Every interview, social media post, or public appearance seemed to generate another round of headlines. Despite the criticism, many artists and fans still praised Ross for his lyrical ability and influence on modern hip-hop. His catalog remained one of the strongest in the genre, but public discussion often focused less on the music itself and more on the controversies surrounding his name. The balance between respected artist and internet talking point was beginning to shift. One moment that drew significant attention came during his public fallout with Drake. After years of collaborating, Ross openly distanced himself. even asking DJs to play Aston Martin music without Drake's vocals during live performances. The move immediately fueled more discussion and made it clear that the relationship between the two had changed.
We back, you dig?
Hold on, how long has this been in the works, man?
I'm gonna be honest, this just was a quick vibe, maybe 2.5 months, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 2.5 months.
Now, do you guys care about album sales anymore?
Of course, this point, as a businessman, you do. That's like niggas selling Jordans.
In a major way. His rivalry with 50 Cent also refused to disappear. The two had spent years exchanging public insults and never showed any interest in repairing the relationship. Rather than fading with time, the feud became another chapter in Ross's growing list of headline-making conflicts. Taken together, the financial rumors, luxury lifestyle debates, viral internet jokes, and ongoing rivalries raised a bigger question. How did an artist who once looked almost untouchable gradually become one of the most discussed and criticized figures in rap culture? And what exactly happened behind the scenes to transform public opinion so dramatically over the years? Rick Ross never backed away from competition, especially when it came to his long-running rivalry with 50 Cent. Instead of focusing on music, the feud often turned into personal shots about money, success, and who had really built their career without help. Ross constantly pushed the idea that he earned everything on his own, presenting himself as a self-made boss who climbed to the top through non-stop hustle. Even while old rivalries stayed alive, Ross kept
You ever seen anybody confront Rick Ross about you?
Not in person, no. Anytime I'm around, he disappears.
Like, hey, why are you running around with this dude's name when this dude's out of jail now?
Well, you know, these guys, like we talked about, when you got some money, they don't care if you be making them lick tampons, you know, everybody with you.
Promoting his empire. New albums, music videos, murals across Miami, and social media posts all reinforced the same message: luxury rap, business success, and bigger moves than ever before. To many fans, he still looked unstoppable. But to understand how he reached that point, we have to go back to where everything started. One of the earliest topics that followed Ross throughout his career involved his past before music. For years, rumors circulated about whether he had worked as a corrections officer. After initially denying it, Ross later acknowledged that around age 20, he briefly worked in the field while going through training, saying the job only lasted a few months before he left. That admission would later become one of the biggest talking points critics used against him. William Leonard Roberts II was born on January 28, 1976 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, before moving to Carroll City, Florida as a child. Growing up around Miami exposed him to two completely different worlds. Some neighborhoods struggled every day, while others displayed incredible wealth. That contrast fueled his ambition and shaped the larger-than-life lifestyle he would later build into his music and brand. As a teenager, Ross showed real talent on the football field and earned a scholarship to Albany State University. But college wasn't the future he wanted. Before long, he walked away from school and committed himself to chasing a music career full-time. He first performed under the name Teflon Don with the Carroll City Cartel before adopting the name Rick Ross, inspired by the story of Freeway Rick Ross. The new identity helped create the bold, larger-than-life character that quickly became impossible to ignore. Everything changed in two.
Question: did you know Rick while he was working in law enforcement?
He was a correction officer.
So we're clear he was a correctional officer.
Yes, he was.
Were you a correctional officer at one point?
I was, yeah.
2006 with the release of Hustlin'. The single exploded almost overnight thanks to its unforgettable hook, commanding delivery, and confident style. His debut album, Port of Miami, followed soon after, debuting at #1 and proving he was far more than a one-hit success. Suddenly, Rick Ross had become one of hip-hop's fastest rising stars. Over the next several years, the momentum never slowed. Projects like Teflon Don, God Forgives, I Don't, and Mastermind kept him near the top of rap, while expanding his reputation far beyond music. At the same time, he launched Maybach Music Group, building a powerhouse label that helped elevate artists like Meek Mill, Wale, French Montana, and Omarion. His influence across the industry grew bigger with every release. Outside the studio, Ross transformed himself into a businessman. He invested heavily in real estate, purchased a massive Georgia estate, partnered with brands including Luc Belaire and Boom Boo Rum, invested in healthcare through Jetdoc, published books, and assembled an impressive collection of franchise businesses, including dozens of Wingstop locations. His portfolio became almost as famous as his music. Looking from the outside, Ross seemed to have everything figured out. Hit records, successful businesses, luxury homes, expensive cars, and a carefully crafted image of wealth made him look like one of rap's biggest success stories. But beneath that polished image, controversies had already begun stacking up, and they would eventually become impossible to ignore. One of the earliest controversies centered on his stage name. Because Ross adopted the identity from former drug kingpin turned entrepreneur Freeway Rick Ross, critics questioned whether it was inspiration or something much bigger. The issue gained even more attention after Freeway Rick Ross was released from prison and challenged the use of the name in court. In 2010, Freeway Rick Ross filed a $10 million lawsuit, arguing that William Roberts had built his career using an identity that wasn't his. The legal fight lasted 4 years before the court ultimately ruled in favor of the rapper, citing First Amendment protections for artistic expression. While Ross won legally, the debate never fully disappeared, and many people continued questioning the authenticity of the image he had created. Then came another controversy that proved even harder to shake. Old employment records revealed that, before becoming famous, Ross had worked as a corrections officer in South Florida during the mid-1990s. Although the job was brief, the revelation sparked years of criticism and gave rivals another angle to attack the larger-than-life persona he had spent years building. One of the biggest controversies surrounding Rick Ross wasn't about his music at all. It was about his past. Before becoming a rap star, Ross had briefly worked as a corrections officer, a detail that would eventually become one of the most discussed moments of his career. The timing made the revelation especially significant. After leaving college, Ross was still trying to break into music with the Carol City Cartel. By the time Port of Miami launched him into superstardom, however, he had built an image centered around the lifestyle of a powerful street boss. When details about his previous job surfaced, many fans were caught completely off guard. The controversy exploded in 2008 after a photograph showing Ross in a corrections officer uniform appeared online. Ross initially denied its authenticity, suggesting the image had been altered. Soon afterward, investigative outlet The Smoking Gun published employment records they reported matched his identity, including hiring information and dates of employment. Once those documents became public, the story spread across the music industry almost overnight. To understand his reaction, it's important to remember the climate of hip-hop at the time. During that era, any connection to law enforcement could seriously damage an artist's credibility, particularly if their public image represented something entirely different. Even so, the records kept the controversy alive, and Ross eventually acknowledged that he had briefly worked as a corrections officer before pursuing music full-time. The admission gave critics and rival artists a powerful talking point. No one leaned into it more than 50 Cent, who repeatedly referenced Ross's past through interviews, social media, and the diss track, Officer Ricky. The nickname quickly spread online and became attached to Ross for years, regardless of everything he accomplished afterward. What started as one revelation soon turned into one of hip-hop's longest-running rivalries. Ross and 50 Cent traded public insults for years, taking shots at each other's careers, finances, lifestyles, and business success. Even as both artists expanded beyond music, neither showed much interest in letting the feud disappear. Despite the constant back and forth, Ross maintained that his business empire continued growing. He frequently highlighted his investments, real estate, and entrepreneurial success, while dismissing many of the personal attacks coming his way. Meanwhile, 50 Cent often argued that Ross only brought up his name because it guaranteed headlines. Their rivalry became so consistent that almost every new interview seemed to revive it again. Years later, Ross revisited the corrections officer topic during interviews, including a conversation with the Full Send podcast, where he said the job lasted only about 4 months before he left. Whether audiences accepted that explanation or not, the debate had already become part of his public image and remained a regular topic whenever his career was discussed. The controversy also refused to stay in the past. Many commentators continued comparing Ross's later explanations with publicly available employment records, arguing that unanswered questions kept the discussion alive. Rather than fading over time, the story resurfaced whenever rivals looked for ways to challenge his credibility. That pattern continued into newer rap feuds. During his dispute with Gilly Da Kid in 2022, the corrections officer story was referenced once again. Then, in 2024, Drake reignited the conversation on push-ups with the lyric, "I might take your latest girl and cuff her like I'm Ricky." The line spread rapidly across social media, with many listeners immediately connecting it to Ross's past. It showed that, nearly 2 decades later, one of the earliest controversies of his career was still influencing how many people viewed him. Ironically, even while critics continued bringing up the controversy, Ross also earned consistent praise for his music. Fellow artists regularly ranked him among hip-hop's strongest lyricists, and discussions about future collaborations with major names, including Drake before their fallout, showed that his talent remained widely respected. But despite the success, the Officer Ricky chapter had become inseparable from the story of Rick Ross, proving how one early controversy can continue shaping public perception for years. One reason the Drake fallout surprised so many fans was because the two had spent over a decade building what looked like one of rap's strongest partnerships. Together, they created major records like Stay Ski Mean, and Ross often spoke about supporting Drake early in his career, long before he became one of the biggest artists in the world. Their relationship appeared to be built on genuine respect. Around that same period, another controversy from Ross's past continued following him. His guest verse on Rocco's UONO received widespread backlash over a lyric that many listeners found offensive. The criticism was immediate, advocacy groups spoke out publicly, and Reebok ended its endorsement deal with Ross shortly afterward. Although his career recovered, the incident remained another chapter that critics continued referencing years later. Despite those setbacks, Ross kept expanding his empire. He released successful albums, grew his business portfolio, signed endorsement deals, and strengthened his position as both an artist and entrepreneur. For years, it seemed like every controversy eventually faded while his success continued growing. That changed dramatically in 2024. After Drake's relationships with Future and Metro Boomin fell apart, Ross publicly aligned himself with Future and Metro, signaling that he had chosen a side. What had once been a close friendship quickly turned into one of hip-hop's biggest rivalries. Drake mentioned Ross on Push-Ups, and Ross responded almost immediately with Champagne Moments, leaving little doubt that the partnership had completely collapsed. Unlike their earlier collaborations, the focus had shifted from music to personal attacks. The exchange became one of the year's biggest storylines, especially as Drake's larger battle with Kendrick Lamar dominated headlines. Since Ross had sided with Future and Metro, many fans viewed him as being aligned with the camp that gained momentum during the conflict. But even after the biggest rap battles cooled down, Ross continued taking public shots at Drake. Through interviews, live streams, podcasts, and social media posts, he repeatedly criticized Drake's music, mocked his image, and commented on everything from his career decisions to his private jet. What might have started as a rap feud gradually became an ongoing public back and forth that stretched far beyond the music itself. As time passed, some fans began asking why the rivalry was still continuing. Defending yourself after a diss track is one thing, but many online commentators felt Ross kept returning to the subject long after most listeners had moved on. Whether that criticism was fair or not, it became an increasingly common opinion across reaction channels and social media. At the same time, another viral moment added to the conversation. In 2024, Ross was involved in an altercation after attending an event where Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us was played. Videos from the incident spread rapidly online, giving critics another opportunity to question the untouchable image he had spent years building. Drake later referenced the moment in his lyrics, bringing even more attention back to the incident. Then came another round of internet speculation. After purchasing a reported Gulfstream G550 and regularly presenting a luxury lifestyle online, Ross was spotted traveling on a commercial flight in 2025. Flying commercial is completely normal regardless of wealth, but because his brand had always centered on private jets and extravagant success, the images quickly went viral. Ross later explained that his aircraft was temporarily being upgraded with Starlink internet, yet the explanation only fueled more online discussion rather than ending it. Around the same time, reports claim some stops on his Port of Miami 20th anniversary tour were using promotional discounts to help boost ticket sales. Those reports generated more headlines, and Drake even reacted publicly, adding another chapter to their already heated rivalry. When these moments were viewed together, the long-running feud with 50 Cent, the continued exchanges with Drake, the resurfacing of old controversies, and constant online speculation, public perception slowly began to shift. Instead of focusing on Ross's music, business empire, and accomplishments, much of the conversation centered on controversies and internet debates. None of that changes what Rick Ross accomplished. He remains one of the defining rappers of his generation, with multiple classic albums, a successful record label, major business ventures, and a career that most artists could only hope to match. His influence on modern hip-hop is difficult to deny. At the same time, his story shows just how powerful public image can be. When a brand is built around being larger than life, every contradiction, controversy, or unexpected moment receives far more attention than it otherwise might. Fair or unfair, perception often becomes just as important as reality. Looking back, the biggest lesson isn't necessarily about Rick Ross alone. It's about how quickly public opinion can change. Years of success can coexist with years of criticism, and once a narrative takes hold online, it can be incredibly difficult to escape. Whether people believe Ross damaged his own legacy or think he's simply judged more harshly than other artists, one thing is clear. His public image today is very different from the one that made him one of rap's most celebrated bosses.